One thing I knew from the beginning is that I want to test a lot, and to do that, I need some basic assets. You might think, if it's just for testing, why not use the built-in rpgmaker ones? And the answer to that is, I really don't like them. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's amazing that they are there, and they can work for a lot of people, but the problem is that they really don't feel the aesthetic that I'm going for. And since for me the testing is going to be mainly about the dialogues and the atmosphere that I'm building, I want to make sure I really can put myself in this world. So I thought it's best if I just prepare some few basic assets I can use that are kind of in the aesthetic that I'm going for, and use them to make some basic scenes that I can test. Now, these are obviously not anything that's final, but I think it works well enough for me just as a placeholder to start testing around, building some scenes, and really getting this game going. This was my first ever pixel art, so I decided to start with a character that doesn't have many details going on and not really much shading. I did work a bit on the symbol of Communist Orthodox Church though, which I think turned out pretty nice. It combines the traditional East Orthodox cross with the hammer and sickle symbol of communism, or I guess rather in this case only hammer. Now for the second character, a generic NPC, I first use a reference of the previous character to make sure the size and everything is kind of the same, and I started blocking out the silhouette. Traditionally, what you see in a lot of top-down RPGs is that the head is really big, and it gives this kind of child look-like to most of the characters, which I really wanted to avoid for my game. So after I did the silhouette, I started filling it up with, the basic colors and blocks and shapes. As you can see, I started playing out a bit with the shading for this one, so it became a little bit more complex than the first character to work on. It took me a bit to really finalize the kind of look and feel of the face. I wasn't sure if I want to go with an actual eyes, if I want to maybe just have the kind of shading instead of any actual features on the face. I also experimented a bit with just having empty holes for sockets, and then it was just a lot of working on shaping and shading, making sure you can actually see where different parts of his anatomy are. One issue that I had was that majority of the tutorials for pixel art are either for isometric view or the side-scrolling view, and what I'm using for rpgmaker is the top-down or three-quarter top-down view. There are some tutorials from that perspective, but unfortunately then they are almost exclusively for the jrpg style, which is something that I'm really trying to avoid. That unfortunately is also the case for any reference images, so it's been really hard to actually find something that can help me make this pixel art. I've been playing around with a bunch of different things, tried some dithering brushes, just seeing really what works and what doesn't. One thing that I continuously had issue with is whenever I was shading his chest and abdomen, it really felt a lot of the time like a smiley face, and I was so bothered by that I couldn't unsee it, which made it a bit more difficult to actually do the shading that I originally planned for this character. As you can see, since I'm super new to this whole pixel art thing, it is just a lot about moving lines around and kind of seeing what feels good and what doesn't feel good to me. And I really couldn't decide a lot of the times, and I just wanted to try as many different things as I could to kind of actually land on a final look. Now, if you're wondering what software I'm using, it's called Pixsquare. It's available on iPad only, and since I already had iPad, I decided to just use that instead of buying iSprite, considering that I would either then have to use my mouse for drawing or buy a drawing tablet, which is something that I wanted to avoid since I have iPad, and honestly, this app is really great. For the color palette, I started by grabbing just a few shades from Zdzisław Beksiński paintings because I really like the atmosphere that he's building with his colors, so I wanted to have something in this kind of tone that he's using. I'm obviously then adding some colors based what I need for shading purposes, but I really want to make sure that my palette remains very small, as I think it's not only going to give me some artistic constraints which can be really good, but also will allow me to not overdo things. Now, a house, my first pixel art structure. structure. It honestly started out pretty okay. You know, I was just placing the structure, making sure the shape is there. I wanted to make sure it looks kind of ratchety. You know, it's a village in the middle of nowhere, so I really wanted to make sure it's not looking like a perfect square. So I mostly was playing with the kind of roof to give this feeling of like, okay, this is probably, you know, made by some people, not with any impressive technology or anything like that. And I think it was getting alright, but the problem was that I fell into one of the most common beginner pixel art traps, at least from what I read, which is to overdo it. You know, you want to make something look interesting and you just introduce way too much noise. And instead of making it look fun or interesting in some way, you actually make it up looking very messy. And that's what happened with the texture of the wood on the outside. So I spent a bit of time actually doing it, and then when I zoomed out, I was like, oh, this is just not looking right. But at first I couldn't really figure out what was the issue. So what I did was just move to the roof, decided to just do this first, and then I'm going to, you know, come back to the front and kind of see what I can do to improve. And with when I was doing the roof, I actually figured out, okay, roof looks really cool. Like, I like how it turned out. It has these dimensions to it, right? Because of the shading, and it looks interesting without, you know, looking messy. And that's when I figured out, okay, you know, I'm just introducing way too much shit to my walls, and I decided to take a step back, remove it, even though it took quite a bit of time to add it, and just do some basic shading instead of it. And honestly, I think it looks way better after I made this decision. So what I did was basically, you know, I looked at this house as being built from these kind of logs that are split in the middle, so you know that they're a bit rounded, right? So I figured, okay, I'm going to give it a little bit of a highlight in the middle part, which is the part that sticks out the most, and then kind of shade it of dark and darker as the kind of outside piece of wood rounds, right? So because the top part and the bottom part are the most indented ones. And I think right now, I mean, honestly, it obviously doesn't look amazing, but I think it looks pretty good. You know, it at least has this kind of 3D dimensionality to it, I would say. I was still struggling a lot with the doors and the windows. I'm still not really happy with that. I tried for the doors, again, a little bit of dithering, just to give it maybe some texture, but just very, very subtle. I think I'm going to be changing that still quite a bit. And windows as well, like the reflections or the shading on the windows, I just can't get a hang of it. But I think this works good enough for now. And it was a really good learning experience. Now for the tiles, I knew that at first for testing I only need to have a tile for road, everything that's outside of it, and then something for the indoors. For the road, I knew I want to have something that's very muddy, in pretty poor condition, no pavement, anything like that, just a lot of mud and puddles. It is, after all, a very small village in the middle of nowhere. It was a little bit hard not to make it too busy, yet still interesting. So I was just trying to add a bit of variation with kind of different shades of mud that you can see there. I also didn't want to create too many tiles at first, so I decided that 3 tiles and then 1 for turn is good enough for now. I can also rotate it to kind of fit everything that I need. When it comes to the grass that's outside of the road, I kind of immediately knew that I just want to have some different strands of it showing with a little bit of shading, just to kind of showcase some sort of variety and not to just have one big plane of green. A little bit hard to make sure that they tiled properly. You know, I didn't want to have any weird empty spaces, but I think for now it worked out pretty okay. For the indoors, I knew it's going to be all wooden buildings, so I kind of already knew, well, it's going to be a wooden floor. I did again experiment a little bit with dithering, but ultimately decided it wasn't really looking the way I would want it to be. It kind of felt really too busy. So at the end, I just moved back, showing those different colorations that you have inside of the tree when you cut it. Alright, thanks everyone for listening to me up, and please keep in mind that these are not final assets. It's just the beginning of my pixel art journey, and I'm sure I'm going to be changing them a lot later on, but it's just something I need for now. Alright, see you in the next one. Bye!